Hi, it's Scott. ROCKFILE back with another podcast review for you. Got to talk about the 1985 film To Live and Die in L.A. in its 4K edition. This was one of those movies in the mid-'80s that blew my young mind. I was early in college, really studying, starting to really get into films and directors and writers and all that kind of stuff. And this movie came out, and I sat in the theater enthralled. I still remember that feeling. The soundtrack, the cinematography, the dark story, the dark ending, all of it, it just, wow. I didn't know movies could do that to me. Now, I was starting to get a little more, well-versed in 70s movies, a lot I had grown up on, but, at the time, it was hard to see a lot of 70s movies in an unedited form because you had to watch them on TV or whatever. So with the advent of VHS and later DVD and now Blu-ray and 4K, we finally got to have movies at home in unedited versions. And it turns out there was a couple versions of To Live and Die in L.A. They did film a different ending but never used it, which is good, I think. If you don't know much about the movie, I won't get into too many spoilers because it really is, even today, packs quite a punch. To Live and Die in L.A. was based on a book. William Friedkin optioned it. He is the director of The Exorcist and The French Connection, two movies that did quite well. He's a very well-known director. He is very fluent in how to make movies, how to make you feel in movies. Even his mediocre movies are really, really, really well made. So he had this idea to take this story and do to L.A. what he did to, 70s drug cop movies in French Connection. He wanted a French Connection, something modern in the mid-'80s with a better soundtrack. He was a huge fan of Wang Chung's first album. There's a song on the album called Wait. He reached out to the band and said, would you write more of this kind of music? I want this for my film. That kind of blew their minds. We'll talk a little bit about that. He also wanted pretty much unknown actors. William Peterson, one of his first roles. Willem Dafoe, one of his first roles. John Pankow, Dean Stockwell, John Turturro, all early roles for all of these great actors who've gone on to much, much bigger things. I remember telling people to see this movie, and people at the time thought it was weird, thought it was dark. It was a $6 million budgeted film that went on to make $17.3 million. It was a hit, but, it wasn't part of the zeitgeist of the mid-'80s. Everybody that I talked to, especially in college and beyond, always brought up the soundtrack before the movie. It was one of those soundtracks that was so ingrained in the movie you couldn't talk about one with the other. So there is some great extras on the Kino Lorber, which is a boutique label, who released a 4K edition of this film a few months back. I got a great deal on it and finally got it in. It's one of my favorite movies, which I haven't watched in a while. I remember when it finally came out on Blu-ray from MGM, I was so excited, but it looked good, but not great. This looks pretty amazing, actually. High marks for the video and the surround sound, but we'll get to that in a minute. The movie is a story of a Secret Service agent. They're the guys who not only protect the president, they investigate things like counterfeiting. And they're after a major counterfeiter called Rick Masters, who they believe has killed some people and is getting away with counterfeiting hundreds of thousands of dollars in fake bills and passing them through L.A. and such like that. William Peterson plays the Secret Service agent. Willem Dafoe plays the counterfeiter. You have a lot of characters that swirl in and out, storylines, other things. There's layers to this story. But the through line is William Peterson's character, Chance, trying to nail Rick Masters, Willem Dafoe's character. They're so young. Willem Dafoe is almost unrecognizable in the movie when he first made it. He plays a very artistic, we're introduced to the character. He's burning one of his paintings, and we find out that he's a great artist who tends to burn a lot of his paintings, even some that critics find good. Like I said, there's a lot of layers to this movie. It's kind of L.A. noir from the mid-'80s, but it doesn't feel that dated. I mean, yes, it does, but it's not like there's no cell phones or anything like that, and they have to be near a phone when it rings kind of thing. But other than that, in the cars, there's not a whole lot to let you know what time this is. It's kind of a timeless story. Were you following the lives of these characters? The soundtrack really does help make the movie. It's not better than the movie. It's just I can't imagine the movie without it. Wang Chung was approached by the director. They were kind of blown away in the first place, and they did all of this music. And basically, the biggest request that William Friedkin had was, don't write a song called To Live and Die in L.A. I don't want a song called To Live and Die in L.A. So they didn't. And they gave him the music, and they had put the music in the movie, and they flew the band to L.A. to watch the film. And on their way back to England, they wrote a song called To Live and Die in L.A. They sent it to William Friedkin knowing that he would probably send it back and say, no, I didn't want this. But instead, he said it was so good, he was going to recut the beginning of the movie. Think about that. You're a band. You deliver this song that you know the director doesn't even want, but he likes it so much, he's going to redesign the entire beginning of the movie to fit the song. That was incredible. Then it turns out, to go even a step further, William Friedkin directed their video. So the interview, there's about a 13-minute interview on the Kino Lorber Blu-ray that comes along with the 4K, where they discuss this. And it really blew their minds to not only be working with him hand in hand, especially someone who they'd heard was hard to work with, but he was very easy to work with for them. But then he also directed them, actually directed them acting in their own video. That would just, yeah. J.J. Abrams wants to use my music in a movie and then film the video. Wow, mind-blowing. I think everybody does a great job in the film. I think it's a career-defining role for a lot of people. William Peterson talks about, there's a good 20-minute interview with him on part of the extras. And he talks about his first two movies were directed by William Friedkin and Michael Mann. His other movie was Manhunter. This was long before CSI and that kind of stuff. He goes, I basically had film school in my first two movies, two of the finest directors Hollywood has ever produced, and he was in both of their early movies. I can only imagine. Like I said, Willem Dafoe is quite memorable. John Pankow is memorable. Deborah Frewer, John Turturro, Darlene Flugel, and Dean Stockwell. The cinematography is fantastic. When the new 4K starts, you're like, okay, well, it looks kind of like an 80 movie. It's a little grainy. But then it's the sunset with this just garish colored titles that are the fluorescent green and the fluorescent red that you see on all the marketing materials for this. And it pops. It just stands out. The rest of the movie looks like a film, just like a film, but a perfect reproduction of this film, like how I remember it in the theater. It's grainy. It's kind of dark in places. It's a little rough looking in places, but that was the idea. It's LA noir kind of thing. I think it's a 5 out of 5 video transfer. The soundtrack, they haven't upgraded in anything directional, anything immersive like Dolby or DTS-X or Dolby Atmos, but the 5.1 mix is much better than what was on the MGM Blu-ray. Now, this is coming from memory, but it just seemed more full, more loud. I don't want to give you the impression that they just cranked up the levels. It does fill out the surround sound more than most 1985 movies do with modern soundtracks. It sounds great, probably the best it's ever sounded. The soundtrack is crisp, the music, the gunfire, all the special effects. Pretty, for the age of this movie, and it's not going to get a Dolby Atmos mix, pretty spectacular sound. I'd give it probably close to a 5 out of 5 for it too. Kino Lorber, this boutique label, they do really filmic, really realistic, really keeping in line with the movies from the video and the audio perspective, and then just chock full of extras. The extras were worked with Shout Factory, which does a lot of boutique stuff over here. All in all, it's a great package. The extras are probably about an hour and a half. There's over 20 minutes with William Peterson. There's over 20 minutes with one of the actresses. There's a lot with the guy who played a doctor, with the guys who did the special effects and the stunts. There's a lot of that. There is the alternate ending, and there is a commentary, and William Friedkin talks about it. I'm glad they went with the ending they did. I don't want to give anything away, but anyway, long story short, this is the package that To Live and Die in L.A. has deserved. If it had come in some limited edition steelbook, it would be perfect, but you can't have everything. It looks great. It sounds great. All the extras are on the Blu-ray, and it's right about $19.99 right now on Amazon, or at least it was at the time when I ordered it. Those Kino Lorber tend to run quite a bit higher, but right now a lot of them are on sale for about $20, give or take. So if you want to add any to your collection, I would highly recommend it. This is a great version of the movie, the best I've seen it. Sounds great. Unless somebody does some crazy Dolby Atmos mix, I think this is the best we're going to get. So highly recommend To Live and Die in L.A. It's a great cop film noir, L.A. noir kind of postcard of the time, but it also still packs a punch with modern movies. Matter of fact, it packs more of a punch than a lot of modern movies I've seen lately. It still hits me pretty hard at the end, and I think that's amazing for a movie that was made in 1985. So check it out. To Live and Die in L.A. is available on a variety of streaming services. I would highly recommend the Kino Lorber 4K edition that's available now everywhere you can buy movies still. I'm Scott. I'm ROCKFILE. Thanks for checking out a podcast today. I hope you have a spectacular day, and thanks for listening.